Could you give me an indication as to the uniqueness of the Baha'i faith as opposed to some of the other religions that were already in the Pacific?
The Baha'i belief in the oneness of humanity is a significant starting point. But I think that the way that is developed by communities in the Pacific is very interesting to see. For example, the role of young people. Although young people do have a role in various churches in the Pacific, there are youth movements and they're very strong and they do a lot of good for their communities. It's quite clear that in the Baha'i community, the young people have a voice. Their training is taken seriously for children and youth. The recognition that they are the future leaders of society. The significance not only of, let's say, moral education because they're in the Baha'i community, but also the other forms of education, that they get a trade of some sort or a profession, I think is a feature of the Baha'i community, so the emphasis on education. I think also the respect for culture is very interesting because it's known that the many religions that have come into the Pacific have different perspectives on how to treat culture. And we know that the Pacific Islands have very strong cultural traditions that held communities together, formed the basis of their system of meaning and of values and of purpose in life based on traditions, ritual, art, performance. And that there was a tendency during the period of missionarization for those cultures to be eroded, sometimes in a heavy-handed fashion, sometimes in more subtle. But it's interesting to see the way in which the Baha'i communities in the Pacific will make their own decisions about what is in conformity with Baha'i teachings and what is not. That might be, for example, in art forms, in how to respect the dead, in how to observe marriage, in how to raise children, all of these ways in which culture plays a big role, in how to treat strangers, and how to people who are passing by your village, how to handle that, handle warfare and conflict resolution. And so you find that Baha'is who traditionally were in tribes that were fighting with each other in some parts of the Pacific become Baha'is and come together and find ways to overcome that. And I think also in the role of women, because of the Baha'i teaching of equality of men and women, has been a challenge in many parts of the Pacific where the status of women was in some places lower than that of men. And on becoming Baha'is, they have had to confront this teaching that says that men and women play an equal role in society and in the family and in public life, and have to find ways forward with that. And it's a great pleasure to go into Pacific Baha'i communities and see women playing a very strong role that they may not have been able to play within their own village traditionally, but now having become members of the Baha'i community, women are taking on very significant roles, administrative roles, leadership roles. And in that, I'm thinking also of your own mother. I want to turn the conversation around a little and mention your mother as an example of a young Fijian at the time, back in the 50s, who encountered the Baha'i teachings and decided to become a Baha'i, and the challenges that posed to her as a female Fijian. And I thought that this program might be a chance for me to ask you something about your mother that fits into that mold of being a woman, a Fijian woman, encountering the Baha'i faith. What did that mean for her life?
My mum's name was Tinai, as you know. As a young lady, I'd say around about 18 or 19, she encountered the Baha'i faith. And she came from a very strong Methodist background. And it didn't sit well. Certainly didn't sit well with her father. And it caused all sorts of conflicts. So I believe at that time she had met a lady in Fiji by the name of Irene Williams, an early pioneer to Fiji from Australia. And so Irene took my mum under her wing, taught her the Baha'i faith and led her to understand, that she had something to offer, and that, coming from a very strong male-dominated culture, that she had a chance to get out and, express herself. And also understand that, the Baha'i faith believed in the equality of men and women. At that time, she also met my father, who was a New Zealander living in Fiji. He'd also come, just like his brother that you mentioned before, Rodney Hancock, who went to Papua New Guinea. He pioneered to Fiji, and this is in 1958. So they started up a relationship which also at that particular time caused a lot of problems and a lot of friction. So much so that he was threatened by the very company that he was working for to be sent back to New Zealand. So this put a strain on the relationship. Here we had her family on one side not being very happy with her becoming a Baha'i, and then also with my father's side, they're not happy with him fraternizing with a local woman. So I guess that sort of set the basis for my mum to really learn and understand the Baha'i faith, learn that she could stand on her own 2 feet and that she had a lot to offer. I think what she has done is that she's shown a generation or two of Pacific Island women, you have got something to offer and that you can get out there and do things and you don't have to be stuck within your cultural limitations. So I think that's one of the great things that she has done. She had traveled around the world. She was involved in many NGOs. She was involved with the United Nations. You know, some of the good things that she has done has been in social economic activities amongst the various Pacific Islands. I remember distinctly her taking about 32 Pacific Island women to the Women's Conference in China in Beijing, I think in 1995. Women who had never left their island homes, and that was a big challenge. But she did that. So. But, you know, again, these are some of the things that, you know, some of the people who are the early leaders in the Baha'i faith stood up and did, and people are carrying on with that work now.